Today's a special day, a day that's been weeks in the making. After the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut, Sandy Hook Elementary that took the lives of, senselessly, violently took the lives of too many students and too many teachers, I was asked by the Speaker and the Pro Tem to chair this commission you see before you. The study of school security was not an issue we took lightly, but one we took as a great responsibility. We knew there was an urgency to study this issue. We also saw the need to do a thorough study and not a knee-jerk reaction. Our hope is that these recommendations will set the standard and serve as an Oklahoma model that states across the nation can and will follow. As the Oklahoma Commission on School Security heard expert testimony, 3 questions were kept in mind as recommendations were discussed and drafted. The questions were, how do these potential recommendations help a principal better secure her or his building and better prepare for emergencies? What are the implications of implementation? How easy can it be done, in other words? Is it practical and helpful to those on the front lines? I believe the report has been handed out, but this is the report of the Oklahoma Commission on School Security. And as you can tell, it's thorough. We've included in the report every presentation that the Commission received, every expert testimony, in-state and out-of-state, via Skype, in person, that we looked at and studied. And before the recommendations are listed, you will find key findings. Beginning on page 1, Roman numeral 2, where are we? Key findings. 20 key findings. Those findings were extracted from the presentations received by the Commission, presented to the Commission. These are the recommendations from the Oklahoma Commission on School Security. And this is important. The Commission unanimously recommends the following: formation of the Oklahoma School Security Institute that should operate under the Oklahoma Department of Homeland Security. A presentation, Director Kim Carter was on our commission. He also made a presentation. Since 2007, the Department of Homeland Security has offered school security assessment training free of charge, no cost. Since 2007, 411 individuals, 411. Only 152 of over 500 school districts have received that training or pursued that training. That said a couple things to the Commission. One, as Dr. Butler on our Commission, principal of Wilburton Middle School, said, I didn't know you offered that training. Marketing was a challenge, and since that time, Director Carter has provided his staff to her staff to receive some initial training. 2, there's a real need of having a resource center under the School Security Institute for best practices, one place to go to, one place to phone to determine what should be done in school security, receive a free assessment, and examine best practices, working with local schools and school administrators and teachers and school boards for best practices in school security. That institute will also allow this conversation to continue. This issue is very important because of the tragedy. Right now, it's on everybody's minds. But after this commission is concluding today, it will allow us to continue the discussion on school security. Recommendation 2, establishing a mental health first aid training pilot program. The pilot program should be voluntary and incorporate the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services and district superintendents in its formation. The pilot program should consider a 2-prong approach: train the trainees model and certified mental health training. An important note, all aspects of the mental health pilot program should not place any additional mandates on school personnel. Mental health is a very large component of large-scale school violence. Bullying does not stand alone as an issue, but particularly when you mix that with any mental health issues or challenges, a large number of young people that need mental health services do not receive it in Oklahoma currently. There was a Secret Service study in 2002 that said the far majority of active school shooters up until 2002 were either victims of bullying and had an additional mental health issue related to their behavior prior to the school shooting. Recommendation 3, amend and change state law to require school intruder drills. As part of that, right now you have to go to Title 63, Title 70, other guidelines and recommendations and mandates really that tell you a school administrator what they have to do as far as the school drill is concerned. Well, our recommendation is to consolidate that into one statute, one location, one place to find those drills. The drill number will come to 10. First blush, that sounds like a lot of drills. There are many districts that are conducting 14 safety drills per year. That includes fire, that includes tornado. Well, the recommendation from this commission is adding 3 intruder, parenthetically, school security drills to that number. 2 fire, 2 tornado, 3 intruder drills. That gets you the number 7. To get to the final number of the 10 requirement, the last 3, local control, total discretion of the superintendent, principal, or on-site school administrator to determine what's best for his or her school because they know it better than anyone. Recommendation 4, require the reporting of firearms to local law enforcement. Many school districts are doing this. We had a presentation from a canine expert, a canine handler, who contracts to schools, and he said time and time again, he understands that when a firearm is found either in a locker or on a person in a vehicle, it's too often not reported. We know schools that do report it on a consistent basis. They're represented on this commission, but the recommendation is to require the reporting of firearms and allow the local investigator, police department, sheriff's department to conduct an investigation to see what should come of the firearm finding on person or on the school grounds in possession. The last and final recommendation is to establish a school security tip line. For, I don't know if it's a number of years, but for at least some time, the State Department of Education had a tip line. It was very expensive to run, and it was not actively used, is my understanding. Well, a tip line should not be that expensive. It may not have a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of technology, but a tip line should be the cost of a phone number. Somebody's answering the phone with the state somewhere right now already. This is low-cost, common-sense approach. Bartlesville, Dr. Quinn is on our commission. Bartlesville is a prime example of what happened in December after Sandy Hook. One student knew what another student was doing, read it on Facebook, heard the rumors, and they began to report to the local authorities what they heard about their classmate and what he was planning to do at Bartlesville High School. That wasn't a tip line. They have a tip line at Bartlesville. That precipitated additional tips coming into that tip line. When the avenue of communication is open to allow classmates to talk about what they're hearing and parents and others to talk about what they're hearing, it's a great way to start an investigation and to understand what may potentially happen at a school. I will close. I'll be happy to take your questions, but I will close again by thanking this commission. It was not an easy task, particularly with the deadline we had. As I mentioned in the report, the deadline provided focus and challenge. These men and women were very focused at the task at hand. The challenge is an appropriate deadline. We needed to have a deadline so we could be finished this year to meet the legislative deadline. There are 4 shell bills in the State Senate passed out of the Rules Committee last week. Those, I believe I have those numbers. Senate Bill 256, Senate Bill 257, 258, and 259 are legislative vehicles waiting to put language into related to these recommendations. The last thing I will say is that I've been in communication with legislative leaders throughout the process. I hosted a number of legislators in my office yesterday. I briefed the governor on these recommendations yesterday at breakfast, and at this time I'll be happy to entertain your questions. Yes, there will be some cost associated with the recommendations. The School Security Institute, and these numbers are preliminary, of course. These numbers are preliminary. The cost of the Institute, approximately $500,000. That's an approximate number, and we've asked Director Carter to look into what that would cost to launch that under his authority at Department of Homeland Security to get him up and running and to get him started. Mental health will also require some funding, Wayne. We don't know exactly what that number will be. You were there when you heard Commissioner White's recommendation last week. This is a hybrid of the recommendations she has made to us, or the proposals, rather, she made to us over the course of several weeks. I might be proven wrong later, Wayne, but I would say maybe $250,000, $225,000 to get the pilot program started, and I reserve the right to be wrong about that. Well, first, I think you're alluding to a state representative's piece of legislation that's in the process right now. And I will tell you, I was not personally asked. I did not read any school security legislation that's before the legislature this session. I wanted to just focus on the commission's work. So I've not read that particular piece of legislation, nor was the commission collectively asked to review any piece of legislation and to endorse any legislation or not endorse or refute any legislation. We had 2 breakout rooms the last 3 weeks. I believe there were. One met in here, one met in the adjacent room. I know at least one breakout room talked for a short time about arming teachers, but as you can see from the recommendations, that's not a recommendation.
Many people will look at this plan and say it's a start, but what do you have to say to the parents who believe there needs to be a school resource officer on every campus?
That's an issue that was also discussed. That's a very fair question, and I think that I can speak for the commission when I say this as well. There's more that we wish that we could do. And with any issue that's important to government, the number one responsibility and issue for any government is to protect its people. And we took that charge very seriously. That's why I think it's important to fund the Oklahoma School Security Institute. But arming school resource officers, there's no funding mechanism for that. And one opportunity with creating the School Security Institute allows the conversation to continue, and allows research to continue, and allows discussion and conversations to continue, and working with state officials and local administrators and school board members to talk about funding ideas on the local level.
We also talked about some architectural changes for schools, like vestibules and locks on doors. Those also left aside on the side for plan 3.
Well, I might take issue with left on the side just a little bit in this respect. Again, the Institute will continue to be able to discuss that. And a lot of commission members knew each other prior to the commission meeting. Well, now those relationships have either gotten deeper or they have begun. Point being, now Director Carter, Homeland Security, having the School Security Institute, has a relationship with the expert architect on the commission, Gary Armbruster, out of Norman. And to reach out to him and say, well, I know of a school district that's considering a bond proposal for their people to vote on. Can you give me some ideas? They want some ideas on school security, what they should fund for future bond proposals or ideas for their local schools. Architecture will continue to be a discussion, and it should be. And to call Gary out for a moment, he was somewhat, we have all these experts behind me in front of you, but Gary Armbruster was really E.F. Hutton, because he's the only architect on the commission, and he's an expert in his own right, but when he spoke about vestibules or glass or locks, everybody just hushed and listened. We're very respectful of each other on the commission, but it was always interesting when Gary spoke, Mr. Armbruster, everybody listened, and he has some very good ideas.
During recent conversations, what's been the reception so far about the recommendations?
To legislators and to the public? Well, as I said, the commission as a whole, we are unanimous behind these recommendations, number one, the commission. I visited with several legislators, as I mentioned yesterday, all the way up to the governor. They were very encouraged by the recommendations that were coming from the commission. And I travel quite a bit as lieutenant governors. I've been out and about throughout the state. They've been I've been very encouraged by the response I've received. And overwhelmingly, I don't think just because I talked about it first, but overwhelmingly, people are encouraged by the creation of the School Security Institute.
And in the process, did the governor or the legislative leaders help you pull back the reins and say?
I heard half a book. Would you start over, and then I guess you're next. Wayne, sorry.
At any point in the process, did the governor or legislative leaders come to you and say, hey, pull back the reins and say, you've got to be very careful about how much money you have?
I want to be very clear. No, not once. Everybody recognizes what an important issue this is. As I said, it's the number one role of government to protect its people. And who is more vulnerable? We have wonderful educators. My wife, public school, Tulsa Public Schools, Oklahoma City Public Schools, school teacher for years. We have wonderful educators. I love them so much I married one. But my point is, they do a wonderful job. But when is a child more vulnerable? When they're away from mom and dad at school. We have great teachers, great administrators, great schools. But this role was taken very seriously, not just by the commission, but by the legislative leaders, and not making one request or pull back the reins.
So then why not do more? Why not spend more?
Well, if you have a recommendation, Wayne, I'll try to amend the report real quick, but these are the recommendations from the commission. You could always do more, I guess, on a correction standpoint, but not corrections. That's the point of the Institute. We needed to have a deadline for legislative proposals to be made before the deadline in the state Senate. So to have that deadline, there's only so much we could do, so much research we could do, so many recommendations we can make. But having this institute allow the conversation to continue, and the pilot program we have in mental health and other recommendations, I think you'll see more discussion on school security in the future.
You're confident that this will get through the legislative process pretty easily?
Well, I was in the state Senate for 6 years, and I'm very optimistic. Visiting with legislative leaders through the process, as I have, they've been very engaged. Speaker Shannon came to a meeting. President Pro Tem Bingman came to, I believe, 2, maybe 3 meetings. I had the minority leaders in my office just yesterday. I'm very encouraged. I visited with the governor's staff, the governor, as I said, 3 times now. I've not received any pushback yet. And I think they understand that the commission took this role very seriously.
On the school security tip line, how will that be different from what was just done away with the state line?
Well, the reports we received, the security tip line prior that was abolished, for lack of a better word, was under the State Department of Education. We understand, the reports we received, it costs approximately $200,000 to run that tip line. If there's $200,000 being spent on a tip line and it's not actively receiving information or being used, I understand why it's not there any longer. Our goal and our understanding to get this up and running is it's the cost of a phone number. It may not have all the technology that the previous tip line did, but start with the phone number and allow the Institute, which the tip line will be under, allow the Institute to work with other law enforcement personnel to gather information, collect information, and then work with state and local law enforcement on that investigation. And then to substantiate, yes, we need to reinvest even more in a tip line, reevaluate after a year, maybe 2 years, how productive and how well-serving that tip line is.
So it would be manned by the Institute, is that what
We'll put it under the authority of the Institute, yes.
How many bills are we talking about?
4. 256, 257, 258, and 259. Principal author on the Senate is Pro Tem Bingman. Principal author on the House is Speaker Shannon.
Just given the number of lockdowns we had this week in the metro, talk more about the importance of taking action here in Oklahoma.
That's a very good question, and I'm thrilled that we are proactive in Oklahoma. I said at the opening press conference, I could be proven wrong on this also, but my understanding is we're the first state to do this. Other states might have task force now or legislative task forces or maybe commissions at this point, but we were the first one to announce, according to Google searches and other research we did, and the first one to announce its findings, key findings and recommendations. And the goal is not just so we can be proud of ourselves, but number one goal, protecting our students, protecting our educators that are in the classroom today, and protecting them so well, that Oklahoma is the standard and the model for other states.
We got time for one more question.
What went into selecting your committee?
Well, we just look for the best and the brightest. A number of issues went into selecting the commission. One, people volunteered. There are members behind me that called me and called my office and said, I would like to be on the commission. Others were recommended by either legislators or local citizens in their area of the state. And then there were others that wanted to serve, and they asked to participate after we already named the commission and started moving forward. And again, I want to say they sacrificed their own time. I mean, they were not reimbursed from the Lieutenant Governor's office. There was no per diem from the Lieutenant Governor's office or the State House or the State Senate. We didn't give them a gas card. I mean, they sacrificed their time and lended their expertise to this effort. And I began the press conference in that manner, and I'll conclude the press conference in that manner. Commission members, it's been a pleasure to serve